Yo, what's going on, y'all? It's Cone back here again tonight with another episode of After the Buzzer, the show where I recap the NBA games from the night. Real quick before we get started, there was a ridiculous amount of scoring tonight in the NBA. I feel like every game was like 130 to 140, 120 to 130, something along those lines. It happened like basically every single game, except the Timberwolves versus Clippers game, which looked like it was the 2009 finals. But regardless, a lot of fun storylines to talk about, and one team in particular that is kind of falling off a cliff. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos, and let's go ahead and get right into it. Of course, we're going to start off with talking about Hawks versus Magic, with Orlando getting their fourth win in a row, this time putting up 135 points. They had all five starters with 16 or more points. Paolo had 20. You had Franz Wagner, who had 24. Bol had over 20. The young guys are really starting to hoop, and this is their first 4-game win streak in 2 years. So if you're a Magic fan, you're starting to see the rebuild and kind of the fruits of all this tanking kind of come together. The Magic have a really fun young core. In fact, I might make a video about a couple of their guys soon. If you want to see those, let me know in the comment section below, because I feel like they deserve some recognition for the way they've been playing recently. On the other side of things, we have the Atlanta Hawks, who have gone from pretty good to bad to even worse. They're now 3-8 since Thanksgiving with this loss, and there have been a bunch of big holes that have been exposed on this roster, so let's go through a few of them real quick. First of all, their defense has gone from being pretty solid to start the year to now 16th in the league. They just gave up 135 to the Orlando Magic, including a 50-point first quarter, which is absolutely absurd. They've given up 120 plus points in 5 of their last 6 games. They're not getting any stops right now, and part of that goes back to them missing DeJounte Murray for this matchup and a few of their previous ones as he's been out over that period of time. Hopefully he's able to come back soon, and when he does, I'm sure he'll fix some of these holes, but it's not just missing DeJounte Murray that's causing you to give up 50 points in a quarter to one of the NBA's worst teams so far, even if they are playing a lot better basketball. They also have been absolutely unable to shoot any threes this season. They're the second worst three-point shooting team in the league, sitting at 32.2% on the season, which is just 0.2% better than the Los Angeles Lakers, who have spent all season getting clowned because they physically cannot shoot from deep. The Hawks are almost on their territory at this point. Maybe they should have got rid of one of the league's best three-point shooters this season in Kevin Huerter during the offseason. That seemed like a pretty bad move at the time, and it's looking even worse now when we look back on it. It's also a symptom of one of the best three-point shooters we've seen over the past few seasons in Trae Young, really struggling, but don't worry, we will talk about him in a second. Then there's the matter of the bench, where once again, having Kevin Huerter would help in this regard if you weren't going to start him and instead have DeJounte Murray there, but you also just don't have any other pieces. They have already a pretty thin rotation, and now that they're dealing with injuries, they're giving guys like Trent Forrest, Jalen Johnson, Jarrett Culver is even playing some minutes. It has gotten really bad in Atlanta, and they just can't get consistent production from those bench guys. So they can't shoot, their defense is falling apart, the bench really doesn't exist, and worst of all, their superstar in Trae Young has forgotten how to shoot the basketball. Tonight, Trae Young had 19 points and 16 assists on 6 of 15 shooting, which isn't terrible. He had nearly 20 and 16, which is a pretty good game for most players. However, the number we need to take a look at is that 6 of 15 shooting, because that has become the norm for Trae Young this season. On the year, he's averaging 26.8 points per game, but he's shooting 40.8% from the field and 28.5% from deep. When you think of Trae Young, you think of like logo bombs, him knocking down threes and making defenses pay anytime they go under the screen. That has not been the case for Trae so far this year. He's been a liability most times when he's shooting the ball. Last season, Trae shot 46% from the field and 38% from deep, which is amazing. He's dropped off 10 percentage points from deep, which is really the area that he has absolutely been unable to hit from. It is crazy to watch a guy in Trae Young. It's not even like he's taking worse shots or anything like that. He's just not able to knock down the looks that he typically does. It's been super weird. And the first video I made about the Hawks, I praised them in particular because they were playing and winning a lot of games with Trae Young shooting terribly. And I said, oh, it's only a matter of time before Trae snaps out of this slump and they end up really starting to turn things around and looking like one of the best teams in the East, because if you're winning with Trae shooting like 30% from deep, wait till he gets back up to like 35% from deep. But at this point, I don't think he's going to get anywhere close to that number on the season, and I'd honestly be surprised if he shot better than like 32% from deep over the course of the entire year. That's how bad the slump has been. Trae Young has shot 50% or better from the field 4 times this entire season. That's ridiculous. That is so rough for a guy that's typically known as not like this incredibly efficient guy, but at least decent. He at least puts up like league average or better. It's been horrible to watch because he's still taking the usual looks that you expect Trae to shoot. Logo threes early in the shot clock. Defense sags a little bit in transition. He pulls up from deep. These are things that Trae Young typically does, and it's always worked. But now that they're not falling, these shots are continuously hurting his team more and more. Because if he knocks them down, then okay, cool. It's not really the best shot in the world, but it's Trae Young. He can hit those looks. If they're not falling, then the offense is basically cooked. Combine this with the fact that he's still probably the worst defender in the league, which isn't all his fault entirely because he just is a smaller guy with a thin frame. There's not a lot he can do defensively against some of the NBA's bigger guys, but the bad defense, the inability to shoot, really the only positive he's bringing at the moment is his ability to get to the line and his ability to play make, which is still absolutely there, and it's a big reason why despite these problems, he's still a positive player, but these deficiencies are continuously bringing the team down. They look at Trae Young to be their superstar, especially when DeJounte Murray is injured. If he's not playing, Trae is supposed to step up even more than he already has been to cover for him, to help them win games. I've said this a million times on this channel, the best teams in the league can win games without some of their best players. You see it all over the league. The Bucks won a ton of games without Chris Middleton. The Celtics are winning games without Robert Williams. Teams can do that. But when you have the Atlanta Hawks where Trae Young just can't seem to shoot the basketball, he can't play defense, and they're losing game after game, it's not all on Trae Young. I'm not saying this is all his fault, but this Hawks team, combined with the fact that Trae Young just can't seem to play basketball the way he used to, they look like a mess at the moment. And I'm really starting to worry about the way that they're progressing because John Collins hasn't been very good this season. You haven't seen great development from like Onyeka Okongwu, who I really thought could have a pretty big breakout season this year, but that hasn't come along. A lot of their draft picks haven't exactly hit, except like AJ Griffin, who's been great. Shout to him. The Hawks feel like they're starting to get kind of stuck because they were supposed to have DeJounte and Trae alongside this pretty solid supporting cast. It's just not been there. It feels like they've made some bad decisions. I was not the highest on this team coming into the year, but I'm probably even lower on them now. I think they're towards the bottom of the Eastern Conference in terms of my power rankings for teams where I think they're going to finish in the playoffs. I think they'll finish around like a 7 or an 8 seed. And when you have so much money tied up in this roster, including 3 first-round picks that you just gave away to bring in an all-star talent in DeJounte Murray, who given has been pretty good, that's not where you want to be in the Eastern Conference. So the Hawks right now are kind of in trouble. In some other league news, we had the Nuggets face off against the Washington Wizards where they absolutely destroyed them. Jokic had 43, 14, and 8. It looked unbelievably easy for him out there, which you shouldn't be surprised. He was playing the Wizards. Aaron Gordon had 22, 7, and 3. Bones Howland had 23 points. It was just a monster effort from them. And on the game as a whole, the Nuggets had 98 points in the paint, which is the second most of all time. That's how bad it was for the Washington Wizards. And a big part of that was the decisions made by Wes Unseld Jr. They didn't have Kristaps Porzingis, who also would have helped out with the defense down low, and the Nuggets were just kind of cooking them. But he started Taj Gibson at center tonight in 2022, going up against Nikola Jokic. And down the stretch, when they needed to get stops to bring the game back, he put him back into the game. Not Daniel Gafford, Taj Gibson, who's like 36 years old at this point. I just don't understand a lot of his decisions. Their offense also is really hard to watch. Kyle Kuzma, who's probably their best offensive player tonight, spent like the second half of the game almost entirely just chilling in the corner waiting for like spot up 3-point opportunities. It was just really rough to watch, and I continue to hope that the Wizards blow this thing up at some point. Over in Indiana, we had Warriors versus Pacers, with Indiana picking up a big win. They were led by Tyrese Halliburton, who had 29, 4, and 6, Benedict Mathurin, who had 24 points, and Miles Turner, who also added 21 of his own. For the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry, of course, led the way with 38 points, 7 rebounds, and 7 assists, but he would leave this one early due to a shoulder injury that seemed pretty painful. He went to the locker room almost immediately. He's going to get an MRI, so fingers crossed that everything's okay for him. And if he misses any extended period of time, with how much the Warriors rely on him, their season might basically be over. I also want to highlight the fact that the Warriors are sitting at 14 and 15 on the season, and it's basically all road games that they've lost. At home, they're 12 and 2, which is absurdly good. On the road, they're 2 and 13. It's just a super weird disconnect for a team that has been here, done this a million times, winning multiple championships, but right now they just cannot buy a win on the road. In Kings versus Raptors, Domantas Sabonis led them to a 1-point win. He had 21 points, 20 rebounds, and 7 assists, just a monster effort from him, and he was really exposing the fact that Toronto desperately needs a center. I talked about this in my video that was all about the Raptors, but it is It's just not working playing Pascal as a small ball center or Thaddeus Young out there when you go up against guys like a Domantas Sabonis, who if they see that you don't really have a big man to match up with him, are just going to eat you alive. It's just not going to work, especially when, if you're going through the Eastern Conference playoffs, you might have to face Giannis or you might have to face against Joel Embiid. They've got to bring in a big body. I don't know when they'll do it or if they will, but it's something that they desperately need. On some positives, Scotty Barnes had a 27-7-10 game. Maybe that'll get him back in a rhythm. And same with Fred VanVleet, who had 39 points, 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. Easily his best game of the season. Final game I want to highlight in particular is Blazers versus Spurs, because Damian Lillard has been absolutely incredible recently, especially over these past 2 games, where the other night he had 11 threes, and the only reason he didn't have more is because it was too big of a blowout for him to even go back in the game. And then tonight he had 7 threes for 37 points in another blowout win. He's just been incredible, playing back up at a superstar MVP caliber level. I really hope he's able to stay healthy, because I think injuries are the only thing that can truly slow him down and maybe prevent a potential MVP run if the Blazers can continue to be successful like they have over the past few games. To wrap up the rest of the games, Tyler Hero torched the Thunder for 35 points in a 2-point win. Spida had 34 points in a blowout win over Dallas. Julius Randle had 31, 13, and 7, with Brunson adding 30 points, including a vicious crossover ankle breaker dagger against Alex Caruso in overtime to give them a win against Chicago. The Pistons took down the Hornets in a huge overtime win where both teams scored about 140 points. Killian Hayes led the way with 25, 7, and 8, having a really solid season after starting abysmally. And then the Clippers beat the Timberwolves in a very ugly game, led by Paul George, who had 17, 11, and 11 to put up a triple-double. With all that being said, I appreciate y'all watching. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoy. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on any of these videos. Comment down below what you think about the Atlanta Hawks. How would you fix this team if you're the general manager, or do they kind of just need to wait on a potential Trae Young bounce back from this slump, or is that slump not going to end? Is this just Trae Young for the rest of the season? I know some Hawks fans have thought about maybe he's got a bit of a shoulder injury, so maybe that's the case. If you have any intel, let me know that too. But for right now, as always, I really appreciate y'all watching. I'll see y'all later. Real one, say it back.